creatives, welcome to my channel. I'm Angela, a graphic designer and an illustrator. We're going to be in Photoshop messing around with mockups. I'm going to show you a little bit on how to manage them, how to work with them, and these are all going to be from free resources. You don't have to pay for them. There's a lot out there. Here's a list of a few over here that you guys can check out. Let's dive into Photoshop and let's mess around with some mockups. The first mockup I have is of this canvas tote bag that's just sitting on the ground. There is a leaf over here. This mockup is from pixpine.com, but I did find it through another website. There are lots of different ones there, but I generally find it through the ones I listed earlier. There's usually a lot of layers. Now, when you download mockups, if they're good high quality mockups, you're gonna have a zip file. And a zip file looks like this, where it literally is a folder with a zipper down the middle of it. And you have to extract the files by right-clicking and then extract. Or I think it might be a little bit different on a Mac, but basically that's what you're doing. We're going to be creating these mockups based on designs I have done previously. So if you haven't seen this video over here, I think I did two different ones. Yes, I did two different versions. They're over here. If you haven't seen those, go ahead and check those out. You may want to do that before this video, but if you want to see the mockups only, then you can watch those later. We're going to get rid of this plant over here, which is very beautifully labeled. By the way, if you have high quality mockups downloaded, they will have all their layers perfectly labeled for you so you can know where things are and you can see where things are. So I'm going to get rid of the leaves by just hiding them a little bit. We're also going to be messing with a book. So here's the top view of the book. And then here is what's called a dust jacket. That's what they're called. They're like the covers around the outside of books. I have one right here. The dust jacket is this piece that comes off of hardbound books. So we're going to be doing a design on the dust jacket, even though it kind of just looks like the cover of a book. It's labeled dust jacket. So we're going to be messing with these, but I figured since we're starting off easy, we're going to start with the canvas tote bag. If you open up your layers panel, they usually give you tons of layers. And there's generally sometimes a background, sometimes there's not. There's other things in it like the leaves, which you can just hide by clicking on the eye. Let's go ahead and import our work, place embedded. So I have two of my logos here. I wasn't exactly sure which one would work well, but I'm kind of thinking that this one here is going to work well. So I'm going to press Control T, downsize this, and fit it into the space that I want it to be in. Press the check mark. When it comes to mockups, you really want to make sure that this is something that's not going to be broken, because you want all of your pieces to remain editable. Let's clip mask this. I'm going to just drag this down. And then I'm going to clip mask this into the smart object here. We created a clipping mask in here so it has a similar lighting. I do have an issue with the handle being right there, so I'm going to zoom in here. Select the bag itself. We're going to take our lasso tool to select the handle. Now that we have it selected, go ahead back onto our vector smart object. We're going to rasterize it and take it away. There we go. So that way it's now sitting behind and it has all of the highlights and the glow of the tote bag itself. You can also warp this if you want to a little bit too, just to make it a little bit more believable. We're going to do a perspective warp on this. So go to Edit, Perspective Warp, click our grid into space here, click on the points, on these corner points here, expand them out by clicking and dragging them around the object that you want to perspective warp. There we go. Make sure you're on the correct layer. And let's go to warp up here on the top left. And then let's warp it a little bit so that way it works with the bag in the way that the bag is supposed to look. There we go. All right. And when you're happy with it, just click the check mark. Do have a little bit of a problem here with the shadow, so I'm going to take this selection here with the lasso tool, Control C, Control J at the top here, save it as a selection. This is going to be rose shadow. Let's press Control C, Control J for a new one. Let's load up our selection. We're going to do a difference of about 23, so that way it looks like it's a shadow. And then to make that even more believable, let's go to Blur, Gaussian Blur up in the filter option, and let's blur it out quite a bit. To about 19.4. There we go. So there is our tote bag with our rosebud on it. Looks quite cute, I think. But now we need to add the flowers because the flowers is what makes it pop. I have an image right here from Pexels. It is one of my greatest resources for stock imagery. That's not really like stock imagery, it's much better. So I'm going to select the subject. It's going to select my beautiful bouquet of flowers here. Here is our selection. Select the inverse. You can go up to select and then inverse for that. I have a keyboard shortcut. Get rid of the rest of the background here, and then let's move this into place. I'm going to free transform this as well, and then we're going to have some beautiful flowers happening in here. I also want to decrease the size of them. Oh, that looks believable. Okay, we're also going to mess with the lighting in here because you always want to mess with the lighting to make sure that it's within the same lighting constraints as the mock-up itself. Let's change the exposure adjustment. We want a lot more exposure. And we want to reduce the gamma a bit because there's quite a lot of light coming in here. Select the subject on the bag layer here and it's going to select it all for me. And then once we have it selected, we can go onto the layer that has the roses, get rid of that. And it's all about making everything look believable. So if you can make it look as believable as possible, then you know you've done your job. And now to apply a shadow to this, take our layer and duplicate it. In the layer below, we're going to do a color overlay. And the color overlay is just going to be black. And then what we can do from here is go up to Filter, Gaussian Blur, and then blur this out a lot. Kind of like so. Let's see what that looks like. Let's move this over and down. That's a bit too intense, so let's see. Decrease the opacity of that a bit. There we go, to about 75%. And then we have our mock-up here. The background is quite a bit plain. We do have that other vector object here, so let's take that down here, put it in the background. You can even free transform it, make it a bit bigger, rosebuds. But this background image here, this one's very, very boring, very plain. Instead of leaving it that way, we can add in another image to make it much better. So why not do that? So let's place our image. Now we have our rosebuds branding back there, and the shadows are there as well as the word rosebuds. We can even bring rosebuds down here instead, and we can even do a perspective warp on this one as well, like we did before, and just do the same thing here. Click on the warp up here on the top, and let's warp it. It'll look like it was on the ground. Press the check mark, and there is our rosebuds mock-up. We can even do a color overlay on the ground as well, just to match with our brand. Whoa, not black. To match with our branding. Overlay, color. We'll also take the opacity down quite a bit. There we go. So it's kind of like a step and repeat almost. You can even change the color of the tote bag too, which was an option in here. Change bag color here. We can do a color overlay for that one, and instead of it being green, it could be a nice tan color. Make it a light tan color here, about 45%. We can do the same for the straps, do the same color overlay. Basically, all you're trying to do is make sure that everything looks cohesive. And then we also have this book. Now, when it comes to books like this, they generally will have plenty of layers for you to mess with. The background can be changed, of course. You can change the background to an image or to a color. I'm going to change it to an image. Have a really cool image behind the book, and then we can add our imagery onto the book instead of it being this imagery. So for your image here, it's going to clip mask it. So let's place our pages. I always like to place embedded. I don't really like to place linked unless I'm working with other designers and such like that. And we're gonna increase the size of it, make sure it reaches all the way. Create clipping mask by right clicking, and it'll create the clipping mask for you on the page. You can even move the image back and forth as you need. You can do the same thing to the other page. Make sure you click on your image here as far as like the clip mask layer. If you guys haven't seen these videos, go ahead and check them out. They are really informative as far as InDesign and beginning work in InDesign. So then there are our pages. The only other thing is that there is the book cover. So I'm going to change the color here. So you can double tap on that color there. Change the color to a nice like yellow. Let's do a nice yellow like that. There we go. That's really pretty. I don't have to have this image in the background either. It could just be plain background such as that. But I kind of really liked this image. It was really quite pretty. But I can use a different image. Let's place another image. Let's place this one instead. We can also make this as a darken, duplicate the layer, and then we can also do a multiply as well. Bring the opacity down a little bit. There we go. Take this, let's duplicate both of these layers, transform them, bring them over to the other side. Look how pretty that is. It's just nice open book page here. We have the dusk jacket cover as well. Generally with mock-ups, you're gonna run into a lot of clipping mask opportunities. So clipping masks are very handy. So just make sure that you get the lighting and the shading correct on them and the adjustments toolbar, because that is going to make and break your mock-ups. We're gonna click on the design part here and embed our cover image. There it is. And again, we can create a clipping mask. For the rest of them, we can just copy them around. Here's the other books. Mockups always give you a lot of really detailed layers, and you can go in and do this over and over and over as much as you need to get the branding across. You can duplicate your images and use clipping masks. Clipping masks are going to be your best friend. Make sure that you don't ruin the lighting effects. You can also change the lighting effects a little bit if you want to. There's generally some lighting effect layers within here. Like this one has a lot of highlights and shadows, and it has a balance effect layer, which I locked them all earlier, but I'm going to unlock them now. Last thing is just to make sure that your mockups stay within the brand colors. So the background here does not go with the brand colors that I have. So I'm going to double click on the background color layer, and I'm going to paste in that color from before, and this looks really vibrant and fun. So that is going to be our dust cover jacket for this one. I'm going to call it the catalog cover really. So we have the catalog cover, we have the inside of the book, and we also have a rosebuds kind of like feature wall here with some flowers and also the branding down on the bottom. And the background image doesn't have to be that either. I could literally just go in and change the background color as we had previously done. It could be the yellow from before, or we can also change it into something else. Instead of the yellow, it could be the olive green that's here on the logo, even though it's a bit dark. It can also be the pink. I really like the olive green, but let's take it up. There we go. Let's do that. It gives it more of a connection to the actual branding itself. Let's see, where did this one go? Ah, there it is, Vector Smart Object. I can take this same color. I have a Smart Object here. I'm gonna select it. Make sure that I don't select the rosebud, because we don't want the rosebud included in this. I can do a color overlay of this green. There we go, and that way it resembles everything else that's within the image here. So that is a little bit of a beginner's guide to mockups. Make sure that you are downloading high, good quality mockups from any kind of free resource that you can find. I listed a few earlier in the video. Clipping masks are going to be your best friend. To use perspective warp, it's going to help you with images like this where it seems to be at an angle. And make sure to change up the lighting adjustments in your images and save your work as you continue to go along. I hope you all enjoyed this video and got a little bit more insight into how to work with mock-ups. It's literally all about perspective and your color choices. With anything that's in a mock-up, you always want to make sure that it is within the brand guideline colors, like with this last one here, where I continued the theme of the yellow, and the first one where I continued the theme of the olive green. But I hope you all enjoyed this video. Go ahead and give it a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to turn on your notification bell so that way you guys can get notified whenever I upload a new video. And I will see you all soon, creatives.